Many spiritual traditions around the world have found that using the theme of 5 elements it has been very useful at analysing the world. And so I say 5 because we've got the 4 familiar ones of earth, air, fire and water, but normally around a central one of ether or the spirit. And so you can find this, for example, in classical Greek philosophy, in Hinduism, Buddhism, Tibetan Bon, medieval alchemy, paganism, and the list goes on. We also see that a similar division of looking at the physical world is in the zodiac. Astrological zodiac, the 12 signs are divided into the 4 elements. And in the tarot deck, the suits of cups, wands, swords, and pentacles represent the 4 elements. So today we're just going to look at one of these, and that is the one of water. And water, and maybe I should say H2O, because it's actually looking also at its frozen and vaporized states as well. But it's such a remarkable thing. I read one scientist say water shouldn't really exist on this planet because it breaks all the rules. And we'll come on to look at these rules that are broken and what significance they have, because if water didn't break the rules, we wouldn't exist. This, I'm sure you all know this very simple cycle of water. Simple, and yet this is what keeps our planet alive. Water vapor rises up from the oceans, it rises up from rivers, and also water vapor is put into the air by the respiration of all green plants and trees. And the water vapor goes up, it forms clouds, it moves around the atmosphere, and then it falls as precipitation, mostly rain, but sometimes as snow and sleet and stuff, but we don't talk about those on a lovely day like today. And some of it runs off down mountains, the surface runoff to form streams and rivers. Some of it goes underground, sometimes very deep, and is there for a long time. Some of these deep artesian wells are now giving us water which fell as rain 1,000 years ago. So sometimes the cycle is very quick, sometimes it's very long. And these underground ones are very important because when they reach the surface, they form springs which lead into streams, etc. So we're going to start off with springs. Sacred springs. Why should springs be sacred? And yet we know from oral tradition and limited in timescale written tradition that springs have been revered as places of healing, places that can be used for oracular purposes by people all across this planet, all societies, particularly those who are more in tune with nature, still connected to our living planet, revere the water sources. This image in the bottom right here, as is Elisa Holywell in Cornwall, and lots of sacred springs down in Cornwall, as well as many other places, of course. And I just really want to make the point that people have been visiting these sites for thousands of years, as long, I suspect, as there have been people and there have been springs. There are many stories handed down through oral tradition of women visiting the springs, to increase their fertility, taking children, either to bathe them or to drink, to cure all sorts of ailments and maladies, and also using them for oracular purposes. Some maidens would go, and there are various rituals you can do at the springs to find if you would meet your true love, your sweetheart, this season. And then along comes Christianity and builds stone edifices over these sacred springs, and they get the name then of holy wells. But they're really the same thing. They're still the same water source is still as powerful. This top left is Megalithomania, holy well in Cornwall. Bottom left is St. Clair. And on the right here, this is Wells Cathedral. And I've included that here because Wells, the name of the city, it gets its name from the fact that there's an upwelling of water. There are springs beneath this pond, which is within the grounds of the Bishop's Palace Gardens in Wells. And if you've never been, do go, not just because it's an amazing Kodak opportunity, but also because this water is potentized. And we'll actually come on a little later to have a closer look at Wells. And of course, we're here in Glastonbury, the world-famous Chalice Well, considered by many to be the most sacred holy well or spring in the country, and leaving its stain of iron in the runways and rills as it runs through. So why I ask is, would this water be revered? Of course, we all need water. We're something, I don't know whether quite what a percentage is, something like 70%, maybe even higher, of water. We need water physically to survive, and so does all life on this planet. But is there anything else going on? Well, our planet is 70% water. The 70% of the surface is covered by water. And I'd like to look very briefly at what is happening within the planet that might affect the water. Could an iron ball 1,500 miles across be a single crystal? This remarkable finding has stirred new thinking about Earth's inner core. The latest scientific belief is that the very centre of the Earth, which they used to say was molten magma, is now a huge, solid, iron, crystalline mass. And here's a picture of an iron crystal. So this is in the centre of our planet, and the planet is spinning, as we all know, at 1,100 miles an hour, and I'm sure you know what an electric generator does. An electric generator is an iron rod, and you spin it within a ring of magnets, and you generate electricity. The Earth is a generator of electromagnetism. It's spinning. The Earth's gravitational field acts in the similar way to the magnets, and electromagnetism is generated. I've got a little schematic here of what I think is happening inside the Earth. So I'm using the form of electronics because it's a very sort of you're watching this because of this computer. Our entire world now, our technological world, is based on computer, which, as Chris mentioned this morning, with talking about quartz and radios, the early radios were based on crystal, and so are quartz wristwatches, and so is this. Silicon chips are quartz, so they're really important. And so let's imagine that this big chip in the center is representing the iron core, and it's spinning. And then down here we've got all these underground aquifers and big sheets of this, maybe one of the big slabs of underground quartz. And over in here we'll have some banks of resistors, which would be mica, for example. Anyway, so all this is creating electromagnetism, which wants to take the path of least resistance to the surface. Here we are looking